Welcome to Agape Social Justice, where we focus on love, truth, and justice. On last week's episode, we talked about having more of a global perspective and talking about the United Nations. And our in-studio guest today also has a local connection as well as a connection to the United Nations. It's actually one of the organizations that my husband and I have supported and promoted for many, many years, and that is the American Human Rights Council. My in-studio guest today is Imad Hamad, and he is the Executive Director for AHRC. So, Imad, I am so glad you're here with us today.
Well, I really appreciate the invite. I appreciate seeing you and Walter always. It's always a pleasure. And I'm one of your fans as well. I admire your activism, your passion, your dedication, and you're always creative. I think that's what our society needs. That's what our nation needs. And I hope that there are more of Stephanie Crider around.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wanted to create this platform at the request of a friend, actually, who contacted me. And part of what you know about me is that I want to be a bridge builder, right? I want to bring people together. We might not have all of the same views, same religion, same political beliefs, but we all have something in common, and that is we care about human rights, right? We care about loving other people. And that's one of the reasons why I think since we met, which I've lost track now how many years ago that was, maybe even a decade or so. Yeah. But when we first met and we were talking about business, I remember sitting across from you in that meeting and I thought, man, this is an incredible leader in the community and someone who really has a passion and desire to serve people. And it was genuine. You meet very few people who are so selfless, and I've never really forgotten that. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to learn more and share with our viewing audience, more about who you are as well as AHRC.
Well, I'm humbled, blessed, and appreciative to your kind words. I think it's the connection of our common good, and that's what counts at the end of the day. Serving humanity is our common passion. It's not just our shared responsibility. When we talk about the human rights, we talk about universal rights, rights that are not limited to any geographic areas or any ethnicity or any group of people. It goes beyond race, national origin, faith. It's about us as humans, period. And that's the beauty of humanity and the power of the cause of human rights. That's why when we talk about human rights, we talk about rights that should not be subject to debate. It should be a right that is granted to all people, to everyone, regardless where and regardless of the identity or the location. So the American Human Rights Council, AHRC, is an organization, a service and advocacy organization that is dedicated to promote and defend and advance and preserve human rights and the values of human rights, the core principles of human rights. When we talk about the human rights, we talk about ourselves as humans. Again, I stress on that because many people tend that when you talk about the human rights or you say human rights, it's like you bring in a political agenda or a political issue. That's not true. Right. We're talking about us as humans, about our basic needs. God created all of us equal. God granted us all human rights. Unfortunately, when we talk about the state of a human right, it varies from a place to another, from country to another, from nation to another. And that's why, our affiliation with the United Nations was a normal attachment, because as a human rights, civil rights organization, advocacy and service organization dedicated to serve the cause of human rights, it's only normal to be part of an international entity such as the United Nations. At the end of the day, we go by the U.S. Constitution here, but we also go by the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. That's our document, our living document. These are two living documents that we keep as our idle here as our scope, as our focus, to keep us on the right track. Now, AHRC is one of the few local organizations in Michigan that earned the NGO status with the United Nations, and through this NGO status, allows us to have some sort of effective interactions and effective collaboration at certain areas, at certain programs with the United Nations. For example, women empowerment, women rights are key component of our AHRC work. And every year, since the inception of AHRC, and since we attained the NGO status with the United Nations, we've been an active participant with the International Women Conference that takes place annually every March. And we form a women delegation that usually attend this conference in person at the United Nations facility in New York. It's been a thrilling experience. It's been a very learning experience to everyone who participated. And hopefully this upcoming one, we're going to extend an invite to you so you can experience that journey. I think you will see a great work, and you will see women leaders coming from all over the world. It's an international setting. It lasts for 2 weeks, but you don't have to stay 2 weeks. But it's one of the most learning, most rewarding experiences. Other project that we work with as AHRC, accredited by the United Nations NGO status, is also refugees. Refugees, to us, it's an international crisis. It's an international challenge. It's an international responsibility to address. So in that capacity, advocating for refugee rights, we attend to certain field visits, international delegations, humanitarian delegation that AHRC lead and conduct some sort of field visits to certain countries. Last year it was Lebanon, and visit the refugee camps and put some sort of an overview report about our findings related to the suffering of the refugee population. So when we talk about the refugee population in Lebanon, it's just a small sample, small fraction of the international refugee crisis.
When you go to the field and you actually see what's happening to people, do you send that report back to AHRC as well as the United Nations, or how does that work?
Yes, we put a report. A part of the trip and the mission is that we visit all the United Nations entities on the ground, and we study and we learn about their work and the challenges that they face. And we go to the other side, to the refugees themselves, in different refugee camps in different areas. And we hear what they have to say. And we try to play a role of an advocacy on behalf of those refugees who sometimes wait long years before they get granted the chance to migrate either to Europe or the U.S. So when you talk about refugee crisis and seeking safe haven, the U.S. is number one in refugees in general, and that's no surprise. It's number one American dream in the world. But definitely the U.S. cannot absorb all the refugee crisis across the world. So it's divided across the United Nations countries. Each country take a portion. But I think the U.S. Is being taken a sizable amount, quantity, number of refugees, and so as Canada. I think Canada is one of the more welcoming, more accepting in numbers.
That's what I was going to ask you too, from your perspective, when you look at doing this global work, what do you see in terms, because there's a lot of conflict in the U.S., right, with people talking about if we should actually take in refugees, if we shouldn't. And unfortunately, it boils down to a lot of political conversation instead of just human rights and looking at people for who they are as God's creation, and for us to be called to love them and to serve them and to help them, right? People who have aspirations just like we do here, who deserve safety and deserve freedom. And I was going to ask, how do you see that perspective from a global lens? Is there conflict in other countries the same way it is here, where we're at odds on if we want to help?
Yes, I think it's the same debate and the same discussion. We have to keep in mind that nobody in this world wants to be a refugee, wants to be stateless, wants to leave their homeland, their families, their relatives. But I think a crisis and disasters, some of it human-made and some of it natural, but wars and divides and conflicts sometimes drive people to simply risk their life and go through this very difficult, very painful journey to seek migration or asylum or refugee in any country, in any possible countries. And we hear stories, and there are true stories when people try to seek migration to certain countries. They die on the road. Either the boat drown or they get lost in the forest and very hard conditions. Many lost their loved ones, their children.
Right.
So they pay a high price. Lots of people underestimate. They think that it's just these people because of the war or the state of war in their country. They just wanted just to run away for a leisure and just for a comfort. That's not literally true. They seek in a safe haven. They seek in a new opportunity. It's like the issue of migration and illegal migration and the crisis that we always hear, and the debate about on the borders and the legal and illegal, documented, undocumented. That's a big issue. That's a live issue of debate everywhere. There are countries who are very welcoming, and they open their doors and they try to help as much as they can. And there are countries that are heartless. They don't care. They block them. They establish some zones area that they block them from entering the country or being able to blend in through a certain legal process so they can adjust their status. Definitely, America, as I said, we all know that our country here is the land of opportunity and the land of the brave, the land of the free. And I think people desire to migrate or to seek asylum to the United Nations because of the stated opportunities. Even our neighbors, the Canadians, who are not in in their best state of economy and everything, Canadians would love to come to the U.S. Europeans love to come and work at the U.S. So imagine the state of refugees who are helpless, hopeless, have no means of support. And many of them, they lose family members before they reach their final destination. So yes, this should not be a political debate. Unfortunately, we live in a life or reality that everything is subject to political debate. It depends on the political makeup, who's in charge, the political parties, how they use it as part of the political agenda, etc., etc. Like everything we talk about, like when we talk about the human rights and we say human rights is for everyone and everyone means everyone, that's a wish in many cases, because many people still deprive their basic human rights. Look at Detroit here. When we talk about the water shut-offs, the poverty level, what I call the working poor. People work, but they poor. So when you talk about the concept of social justice, and when we can reach that dream of social justice, etc. So when it comes to be put as a political platform, it loses its human nature. It's a human content.
It does.
But when you talk about water, Water is a basic human right
Should
for
be a
all.
basic right.
It's not a luxury. It's not a privilege. You talk about education. Come on. It's a basic human right. It's not a luxury.
Exactly.
It's not a privilege. You talk about food. Okay, it's the same thing. You're talking about the basic needs of the basic essentials that a human can survive and live. But today, everything is governed by politics and the greed of finances and the gains.
Right, absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned the food, water, shelter, all of those basic things that I feel like we spend so much time advocating for people for that it's like there's so many other things that we could do as a country if we would just focus on this being a human right. It should be automatic. There are so many organizations that are spending energy, like in Detroit. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I know you've been part of that fight over rights to water. I mean, there's been calls for moratoriums because so many people have not been able to pay their water bills.
Sure.
We're talking hundreds, thousands of dollars. And I think the average person just doesn't stop to take that in for a moment because it feels like a privilege that everybody has, but you don't. Everybody does not
When you
have
talk about water, education, you're not talking about cell phone.
Right.
I need the iPhone 15
Right.
or iPhone 14.
Right.
You're talking
Right.
about basic God's nature necessity that
Right.
God granted for all. I think it can be worked out, and I think people can, the system can afford a plan
Sure.
that makes this a reality. Not just
Financially, I know we
Yes,
can.
we have billions of dollars. Look, we have billions of dollars that we put in foreign aid, and more, unfortunately, toward funding wars versus funding
Right.
peace.
Right.
These billions of dollars, they could be used to elevate the standards of living for the poor and those who are under poverty line, those who are disabled, those who are homeless. It's a shame that, in America, the greatest nation on earth, the richest, the world leader, and homelessness is one of the most challenging. Look what happened to our veterans. These people go, they serve the nation, they sacrifice their life, they come back. Many of them, they get lost and they get deprived from their basic rights to continue their life in a decent way. So we have a long list of challenges. I understand we're a big nation. We're not just a small country. I understand we are like over 350 million people, not just like Canada, bigger than the U.S. in the geographic measurement. It's like 3 or 4 times bigger than the U.S. But the population in Canada is like 77 million versus 50 million in the U.S. Still, we have the resources.
Right.
We have it. It's not that we don't have it. But politics isn't the way. I understand that people will come and say you're naive, you're idealistic because you're underestimating the importance of the national interest and national security that mandate politics and mandate political moves here and there. I'm not naive. I'm with it, but not to a point that it goes to the extreme, forgetting our own, forgetting ourselves, forgetting those who are in need within our own society.
That's right.
I can help others, and I need our nation to continue help others. But at the end of the day, I cannot comprehend helping others while we have hungry people here.
I struggle with that question probably every week. I mean, seriously. And I feel like even going in political circles that I'm in now, that's not even a conversation that is safe to have. You know what I mean? It's like you will come under attack where some individuals think that you're going to be anti a particular group of people, right? Just to even say, why can't we use our resources to also serve and protect those who live right here among us? I mean, we can drive down the street 20 minutes, 30 minutes from wherever most people live and see people who are hungry and have no place to live. It just doesn't make any sense.
No. And I think you're very right. It's easy to label you when you speak the truth, when you speak your mind. Although we all cherish our basic right of freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of stating your views. And sometimes when you do, you get doomed with it, okay? And you say, hello, you know. But I agree with you that something is wrong. Something needs to be done. I know it's not an easy process. I know that it's going to require lots of work, hard work. Look, the struggle about the water shut-offs in Detroit, it's been 4 years. The progress is very limited. Look at the homeless issue challenge. The progress is very limited and varies from city to another, from state to another. Look at the environmental issue here, the toxic, the hazard waste, the radioactive waste in certain neighborhoods in Detroit.
Right.
Why? I ask myself why. Why we allow fellow residents, fellow humans,
Right.
to be subject to that and get sick and ill. And then when they get sick and ill, they will not find the right treatment,
Right.
the support to be treated.
Right.
It's all about the greed of money, the greed of certain corporations, certain quote-unquote mafia that control that. That's the greed all over. It's universal. It's not just here. I'm sure if you look at other countries, you may see that they have worse challenges than ours. But still, I go back to say, but they are not the champion of the world. They are not the leader of the world. They are not the greatest nation on earth. They don't have a fraction of our resources. So we can do it and we can be the example
Right.
for others to follow. I think, that's why sometimes when people talk about the human rights, it connects with their hearts, but they feel the challenge to see it as a reality. Like, for example, look, if we talk about prisoners, as President Obama described it accurately when he said, our nation deal with the challenge with a nation behind bars.
Yes.
A nation behind bars, yes. The U.S. is one of the countries that have one of the most big prison population. Look at the state of Michigan. I understand that we need to fight the crime, and it's our duty. We need safe society, safe neighborhood. This is what we all strive for. Yes, but also there is a concept, punishment, correction, guidance, granting a chance to people. Sometimes here, unfortunately, somebody commit a secondary crime, they get an extreme sentence, and somebody who commit a very
Right.
serious crime
Right.
get a very
Right.
brief sentence. And you look around and you say, what's going
The
on here?
disparities of treatment is insane. Our school to prison pipeline is real and out of control. And I also feel like we are using our jails and our prisons to house people who have mental health conditions because we've allowed that system to fail, right? And in my personal opinion, it's not just one political party, which is what people like to do. I've seen where both parties could do a better job in terms of what the administration can do to help those who are in need. Let's stop throwing them away or throwing them into prison, right? Let's find a way that we can actually provide the resources and the treatment and housing and employment and all the other things that they need to have a sustainable, viable, thriving life. And I just don't really see that happening.
You see, it's ironic because if you look at the name of the facilities, it's all correctional facility. They put a name, correctional facility.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, in Michigan Department of Correction.
Yes.
But where is the concept of correction? I
Right.
think that's what
Right.
is lost in action.
Right.
That's what missing in action. That's what needs to be redefined, restructured. It's like the mental health. Yes, mental health is a serious challenge facing our nation, facing the world. It's everywhere. Now, in America, if you look at this challenge, you see huge resources. You see funds. You see treatment tools. But if you add them up and you do some sort of quick evaluation, you see it ineffective. And I myself, I can tell you, I dealt with a personal experience. I reached a point where I now believe what's there for mental health is not effective, and it's all about how to make more money. It's like a process of intake to intake to intake to intake. But do we have a real remedy, a real treatment, a real recovery journey? I don't think so. I doubt that very much.
We don't. And as we close, I also want to say that one of the things that I've noticed is that for people, whether you have a mental health issue, whether you're without a home, we could go off the list, right? One of the things that I've noticed is that if you don't have an advocate working with you and fighting for you, right? Not just standing beside you, but standing in front of you and fighting for you. It's almost like you don't get anywhere. It's like society has created, it's like tutoring in schools. All the students whose parents can afford to get the tutors, they do better in school, right? And it's the same thing for people in the community. If you have an advocate, it seems like you have an advantage and you get much further along. And I'm so glad to see that your organization has not only been a leader in terms of making people aware and educating, but you put us as advocates in the room with the organizational leaders. So we can say, here's what we see, right? We can kind of be the voice for people, and then we can have a dialogue right there in the room. And it's been incredible. So I really just want to end by thanking you not just for coming today, but for all of the work that you've done over the years. I know the work you'll continue to do. I want you to quickly give your website so people can look you up, and then they can check out the gala as well that you're having.
Well, I thank you again. I appreciate the invite. I appreciate the opportunity. It's all about equality in life.
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line to it. That's why when Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, I think that dream will not be real unless we have equality, period. So our website is www.ahrcusa.org, ahrcusa.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Agape Social Justice family, I am so glad that you had an opportunity to hear not only about what AHRC does, but really to hear the heart that we've talked about today, that we're compelling, we're asking you to have. Here's something I was thinking about when Imad was speaking, is that we do need to teach our children about the Constitution, right, for America. But how about we start teaching them about the Declaration of Human Rights? That's something that I think that we can take action on, do it ourselves, not rely on government, not rely on schools, but rely on our own intellect, our own heart, our own empathy, our own love for one another. Please take the time. Look up Declaration for Human Rights, and feel free to check us out on social media. Let us know what you learned, what you're thinking, and how we can partner moving forward. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, Agape Social Justice family. Thank you so much for tuning in every Sunday at 8:30 p.m. We appreciate it. And as we told you before, we would have a merch store, and we do. This is our V-neck ladies shirt, and you can find this on agapesocialjustice.com. This is our logo, and it says love, truth, and justice, which is what we stand for. We also have a mug, and we have the logo on the mug. You can find this on the website as well as a phone case, a pen, a tote bag, and a number of other accessories, even a hoodie. You can find that on agapesocialjustice.com. Feel free to spread the word. Go to our social media on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and on X. We're Agape Social Justice. And so look for us there, and we thank you. We appreciate you. See you next time.
Hi there, Agape Social Justice family. My name is Walt Kreider, Stephanie's husband. Of course, you know about the show and what we stand for, but I got a real stupid question for you. How many of you were offended when you saw that of Tyree Nichols, as well as the other homicides that the police have created throughout our country? Well, we have created an organization called Police to Protectors. That's police, the number 2, protectors with an S.org. What do we stand for? It's all about transforming the police into that of the protectors. Because what do we care about in our communities? You know, we don't care about being policed. We don't care about being ticketed. We care about being protected. And that's exactly what we're talking about in terms of reimagining what the police, what law enforcement, what our protectors can actually reflect and bring to our communities. So not only just join this effort, because yes, we need your support, but also we need your financial support. Check us out, police2protectors.org.